Well, guess what time of year it is? That's right, it's Halloween, and the weird thing is I've been doing these Halloween specials for nearly 3 years. Now, why it's not 4 is a very obvious and real reason, and we don't really talk about FNAF theories. Oh god! Anyways, last year I played Gremlins 2, but the first year I played Castlevania 4. So I thought this year it's about time that I played the Genesis game, Castlevania Bloodlines. So, is it as good as Castlevania 4? Let's find out. Man, I didn't know Mother Nature was as scared as FNAF theories as I was. First off, there's some story, and it's just Belmont family killed Dracula, and years later, Dracula's niece, Elizabeth Bartley, revives him, and some other whip-wielding dude comes in to defeat Dracula. There is only one thing I really want to point out, and that is Trevor Belmont and Sypha from Castlevania 3 appear in the opening. Anyways, time to pick a character, which was a new thing for the series. And even in later games when there were other playable characters, you could just switch between them or beat the game and then you could play as another character. Even though more playable characters were introduced in Castlevania 3, this was the first game where you could actually select a certain character from the beginning. Moving on to the actual characters, you can play as John Morris and Eric McCarty. Now, who are these two? Well, John Morris is apparently the son, or even grandson, of Quincy Morris from the original Dracula novel. And Eric Lacarde, well, he's just some blonde dude that's tagging along. Morris has a whip and Lacarde has a spear. There are some minor differences between these two. Morris whips in 5 directions, left, right, left up, left right, and down. Where Lacarde can use a spear in 6 directions, just adding the feature to spear up. Now, since I'm on this topic of attacking, let me talk about the controls. A attacks, B jumps, and C uses the sub-weapon. And C being the sub-weapon button is great, as this is the only other Castlevania game I can think where you can do something as simple as duck and use the sub-weapon. The other game is, of course, Castlevania 4. Now, another thing to bring up is that instead of just going around the castle, you actually go around all of Europe. In World War I, anyways, getting to the game, Stage 1 shows off some good graphics and music, even showing how there can be mini-bosses as well as stage hazards, like giant axes that can kill other enemies. There is also the signature wall meat, aka pork chops, and at the end of the stage you fight a knight who keeps losing parts as you fight it. Stage 2 is Atlantis, and has water rising parts, a shit ton of mini-bosses like the Wizard of Water, Yellow Giant, and Red Giant, Medusa heads mixed with water, and a cool section where you can destroy some platforms. The boss is a giant black rock monster, who has a crystal, and after hitting it a few times, he dies. Stage 3 is the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Here, there are flying birdmen that can get their heads cut off. You eventually climb the tower after you kill a giant dragon head. Then you have to jump to the top by jumping across these moving platforms while killing demons. The boss at the top of the tower you fight is a giant bat, who is the first hard boss in the game. Stage 4 is a 1914 German weapons factory, which means skeletons wear helmets. This is possibly the most creative stage, as you get to see all these classic Castlevania enemies on conveyor belts and around old modern machines. There are also some other cool parts like the chain jump part and this part where you have to duck under these blades that can cause major damage. This is also the stage where you fight the Frankenstein monster, which I feel is not a good choice for him to be a mini-boss and an easy one at that. Anyways, the boss is pretty cool, as I see it as some possessed years that just came together. Stage 5 goes back to the regular old backgrounds, and this time with red skeletons. And for some reason, the classic knight enemies only start to appear in the second to last stage. There are also some one-off enemies like these wall-eye guys, wheelie knight, arrow knights, and the hammer knights. There are also 2 more mini-bosses, the first being the blue knight, who can extend his arm, and some pillar face that shoots light balls. The boss is the Princess of Moss, a woman who turns into a moth, which can lay eggs to make more baby moths. That's really weird. Anyways, before I continue to the last stage, let me talk about one more thing. There are limited continues. Now this may seem like something very minor, but it makes everything very different, as every time you use a continue, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass not to die anymore. Now it's not like they actually changed the difficulty. I mean, you can change the difficulty to easy in the options menu, but when you play on easy, they block certain bosses like the Frankenstein monster from you. Okay, stage 6. The final stage. This has everything or almost everything you've done put against you, and there are some pretty cool parts, but annoying parts at that. Like the part where there are these foreground-background type things, where if you need to make a jump, you'll be looking at the background part to make that jump. There are also some upside down parts, and as I call it, the first boss hallway. After all that, you begin to fight the first of 3 final bosses, and it's Death. But before, you need to play some cards which can lead to meat, death attacking, or the main card which makes you refight a boss. After all the cards are gone, you fight Death, and it's kind of like the battle from 4, because you know, this move. Next is Dracula's niece, Elizabeth Bartley, who turns out to be Medusa, and she's really easy. Then you fight Bartley. And the fight may take some time, as it has a kind of cool mechanic. He or she will make 4, 5, or 6 orbs, and you have to keep hitting her until all the orbs explode. If not, it can cause some major damage. After she gets exploded herself, you go to fight Dracula. Alright, time to kill the Prince of Darkness. So Dracula has 3 forms. First is the standard Dracula form, which he shoots fireballs and a fire wheel. After he dies, he transforms into a tiny death with a staff. All he does is fly around and make pillars of light that can cause major— oh fuck this joke. Now for the final demon form, as I call it. This part is hard, as this form has like 3 phases. First is the blue phase, where he shoots tiny sights that explode. Next is the red phase, where each time you hit him, he shoots fire. The final phase is the gray one, where he jumps around and shoots bones. That was something. And it was really damn good. To be honest, this is one of my favorite Castlevania games. And it is the best Castlevania game to go on the Genesis. It's a perfect game. I love the music and the controls. The graphics are great for the time. The use of some gory pixels is amazing. And even the mood is perfect. Doesn't mean that they didn't fuck anything up. I mean, they did fuck up the continues in difficulty, but I do think it's probably one of the best games in the series. Not as good as 4, but I do recommend it. Well, happy Halloween, and remember, there was one truly scary thing in this world, and that is FNAF theories. Oh my god!